And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Gamification Revolution. I'm your host, Gabe Zickerman, and I'm here on a beautiful sunny afternoon in New York City, enjoying the start of maybe of spring. And along with spring, so much new and exciting stuff for everybody who's joining us. Thanks for being with us today for this special edition. Um, First up, I want to remind you if you haven't had a chance to plan your trip already, you can join us at Gamification Summit. It's coming in just a week and a half. It's just amazing this year. I can't tell you how excited I am. We have over 65 sessions. We've got just as many amazing speakers from an incredibly wide range of companies talking about different ways that they're using gamification to engage audiences, both in the enterprise, so both employees and customers. It's an astounding lineup for this year's conference. I'm so proud and pleased to be part of the team that makes it happen. In particular, some of you may have noticed that we just announced a few speakers that I thought you might find interesting, including Patrick Merck, who's the general counsel of the Bitcoin Foundation, which I'm really excited to welcome him to the conference. I just wrote a post a few days ago about Bitcoin and my belief that Bitcoin will be a significant disruptor in the loyalty business. And so I think it's really worth seeing what Patrick has to say and how we can use new alternate currencies like Bitcoin to engage audiences. Also, Charles Coonrat, who some of you may know, he's the self-described grandfather of gamification, but he wrote a book in 1984 called The Game of Work, which has a lot of the foundational concepts for the enterprise side of gamification that we think of as being very standard today. And Chuck will also be joining us at Gamification Summit, which we're super stoked about. I encourage you to check out the lineup for G Summit. If you can join us, be sure to use the code GREV to join us at the summit live and in person in San Francisco, 16th through the 18th. My workshop is already sold out, but there's still a few spaces remaining for the conference, and really looking forward to seeing you there. If you can't join us in person, everyone, you can also get your copy of video access to the conference. It gives you HD access to the full video catalog from the conferences, every session, so not just the sessions in the main stage, but every session is available. You purchase that, you get unlimited access to that after the fact from the event. Really high quality, great production value this year. We've invested a lot in building out that resource, and you can find out more about video access as well at gsummit.com, and Ivan will get you a link to that. So moving right along, it's Gamification Summit. We're within 2 weeks of G Summit. And as many of you know, I have a new baby. I have birthed a new baby. It's my third book, The Gamification Revolution. It just came out this week, published by McGraw-Hill. Interestingly enough, I co-wrote it with my co-author, Jocelyn Linder, from the first book. And, before I talk about it and what's so exciting about the Gamification Revolution, how leaders leverage game mechanics to crush the competition, which is really what this book is about. I want to tell you that this book has really been a number of years in the making. One story that most people don't know is before my first book, Game-Based Marketing, which you can see up there on the bookshelf, the blue book. When we were out talking about gamification for the first time in 2008, 2009, the book that we wanted to write, the book that I wanted to write at that time, was a sort of strategy look at gamification. And the publishers that were interested in the book, it was global financial crisis. This was a brand new topic no one had ever heard of. And the publishers that were really interested in the book wanted something a little bit more focused. They wanted something less, general. It was an untested market. It was an untested opportunity. And so we wrote Game-Based Marketing, which I still love every time I review it. It's such a really interesting title on the subject of gamification and loyalty in particular, and the marketing side of things. But the book, the passion for the content that I really wanted to deliver was this strategy book. And when Danya, our editor at McGraw-Hill, approached me, now almost, I guess, like a year ago, to talk about, writing another book, I was initially skeptical. I'm a little skeptical of kind of mainstream publishing. And she was like, look, I think the world needs a book that talks about gamification as a strategy. And I said, the time is right for that. You're absolutely right. And there's this project that I've, been in my heart for so long that I really wanted to write. And is this interesting to you? And we looked at a new kind of vision for it. And so the Gamification Revolution was born. And we started working on it. And I have to tell you, I'm so pleased with it. The book is divided roughly into 3 sections. It's got a ton of new material, even for those of you who are experts at gamification, those of you who watched my videos, those of you who've come to G Summit in the past, it's actually full of a lot of new case studies. We divided it really into 3 categories. It's gamification as a strategy, gamification for HR, and gamification for marketing, which I think are the 3 big sort of legs of the current discussion. When we looked very closely, our observations were about ways of thinking about how businesses are using gamification in a strategic way in all of those categories to beat the competition, to get a leg up, to think about the notion of games being woven into the organization from top to bottom and bottom to top as something that really sets companies apart for the future. And more than ever before, it strikes me that we are on the cusp of this very significant disruption in the way that business is done, in the way that society works. And I think the factors behind that disruption are right in front of you. I think you can see them already. Everyone can see them, but we have to start connecting the dots. It's about the millennial generation. It's connected to the rise of people with ADHD and autism, who I believe are a next kind of evolution in humanity. It's about the kind of failing of traditional marketing to speak to people, I think, in a way that's authentic and connect with them, and the kind of gimmicky nature of a lot of marketing, particularly social media marketing, which to me many times feels just like the fakest of the fakest fakery in the marketing world that I can imagine. The slow demise of the classic loyalty program, which already nobody really cares about, but everyone thinks they do, and set against this backdrop of incredible distraction. We still need to run businesses. We still need to be successful and drive an economy forward. And some organizations, both on the nonprofit side and on the for-profit side, are starting to grok that. And what they realize is, to do this, they need to put sort of gamification in the heart of their company, in the strategic DNA of their company. They need to bake that in. And so they're increasingly looking to hire people with this expertise. I believe as many as 5,000 people over the next couple of years need to have this expertise in order to be able to drive this forward. It's about bringing the chief engagement officer into the organization, which we talk about in the book. So if you're interested in this topic of gamification as strategy on either of those categories, now's a great time for you to grab the Gamification Revolution. Go to GAMREV, so GamRev.com, to grab your copy of the book. You can buy a digital copy, you can buy a print copy from any of your favorite booksellers. And also, there's an amazing little detail in the book that I think you'll find really super interesting, which is that we have built the first gamified social reading platform for a book, and it's called Read Social, and we built it at Dopamine Labs, which we're very excited to reveal. It comes along with the book. It's referenced in the book multiple times, and we've used core principles from gamification to, in an agile way, build an app that allows you to discover and share the best ideas from the book with other people, receive a positive reinforcement for that, track that, and access a whole bunch of bonus content from the book as you complete challenges in every chapter. You'll unlock special content that you haven't seen before, and be able to share and comment on the things that other people have to say about it. So in short, it's a way of socially reading and socially interacting with the book that we think is pretty new. And I really am keen to get the feedback from everyone in the industry, all of the members of the community, what you think about Read Social, what you think about the book, what we can do to make it better and bring more content into the mix. I'm super excited about it. And for those of you feeling, very good and papery, I'll tell you 2 things about Read Social. One is that you can use it alongside any platform. So if you're reading on the Kindle, you can also use the Read Social app. If you're reading on paper, you can also use it. You're not required to use a reader of any particular kind. And the second thing is the book itself contains a number of little games and quizzes that you can take along the way. So we sort of gamified the print book to make it more exciting. And that was something that Jocelyn really felt strongly about. And so I'm excited to share that with you and encourage you to go to GamRev.com, get your copy of the book, play around with Read Social, join us on this amazing, amazing journey to the gamification revolution. And I have another little kind of tidbit for you guys towards the end of today's conversation that you'll find particularly interesting, or I think you'll find particularly interesting, about gamification and the Gamification Revolution, my new book, and G Summit, and some way that you can engage with us just coming up next week. So I want to take your questions today. I know we have some folks waiting with questions. We've got some folks waiting on the camera. It is Friday, so if you have questions, please submit them. Click the button that says Submit Questions or Camera, depending on where it is on your screen, could be anywhere. Click the button that says submit questions. If you've got a camera, you can come on the screen and join me on the program and ask your question to me directly. We can talk about stuff a little bit. And I'm really excited to hear, what it is that you have to say. So we'll take the first question. This one is from Neo or Knee0. Neo asks, how do you reconcile persistent gamification and privacy? So great question. So privacy and gamification is a real concern, and and I think it's set against. I want to give you like a couple of different perspectives on this. So the first one is, broadly speaking, our definition of privacy is evolving, and I see my sense of what's happened in society is that there are people who have basically dispensed with their fear about privacy. So you've got like hundreds of millions of people who sign away basically all their content to Facebook every day, don't care. It's they're getting value out of something, so just like privacy is no longer the same thing for them, and possibly some of that has to do with just nobody being threatened by it yet, so they accept this invasion of privacy because they want the utility of the product and they haven't yet seen a reason why they wouldn't. And then there's a small, and I don't want to, I don't want that to be pejorative, but there's a small group of people who I think are very vocal privacy advocates, and they're sitting off in a corner yelling and screaming and going, hey, why don't you guys understand there's like a real privacy problem? You're giving everything away. All your content belongs to other people. What's wrong with you? Listen to us, and they're yelling off in the corner today, mostly, I think, falling on deaf ears, because the vast majority of people are like, well, privacy is one more thing can't deal with. Yeah, whatever, it's fine. And then there's always been this small hardcore group of people who don't believe that individuals deserve a right to privacy if the person's engaging in something that they don't believe in the first place. And they often use that. They've used that argument, whenever someone's trying to defend their right to privacy because they, they like said something that was a terrorist thing, or they said something that was inflammatory, and then people will say, well, they don't have a right to privacy because they were doing something terroristic, or they don't have a right to privacy in their home because I don't believe in gay sex, and so the government should be able to bust in, which is legal scholars, for those of you who know, there's a famous decision that's like from the 80s. It was the first time they guaranteed the right of gay people to have sex in their own home without being arrested. So privacy is, there's a group of people who are like, privacy is a variable concept, depending on whether I believe with you or not. There's a group of people who are like, privacy, privacy. And then the vast majority of people are like, I don't know, and I don't really care. So I think that gamification solutions, just like most other products in the market, are they're like market driven in terms of their response and feelings and ideas about gamification. They are designed to the market's demand for gamification. If the market at large wants super high privacy type of interactions, then gamification providers and companies that deliver gamified solutions will deliver those in the framework of what the market wants for privacy. If people don't demand privacy, if they don't insist on privacy as a core thing that has to be baked into everything that they do, I don't think that you can expect gamification providers to be the ones that step out there and say, well, you know what, we're going to be the ones who like really safeguard your content in a way that Facebook won't do, even though we're touching Facebook, right? Or Twitter won't do, even though we're touching Twitter. So I feel like there's some fundamental tension there, and I reject the idea that gamification vendors should be responsible for privacy on the whole for their users, but I do support the idea that we should always strive as an industry to be better than other people. So just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean we should do it. By observation, I feel like the most important thing is that users have got to opt in to have their behavior tracked and monitored, and that's a fairly elemental part of most gamification solutions, is that you're opting in to having your behavior tracked, and you're opting into having your behavior reported on and monitored and so on. So users, that's got to be absolutely positively transparent to users. There can be no deception about that in any system. I think it's got to be obvious what's going on. I think obviously we don't want any of that data to be misused. I haven't really seen any examples of that. But to answer your kind of question, Neo, I would say that to a great extent, most of the online companies that you do business with, especially the ones where you're not paying, you are trading your data for free services. You are trading your time for free services. And some of the ones where you are paying, you're also doing that, like on top of it. Like if you do Hulu Plus, like you're doing both. So I think the practical reality today is that unless you can convince the market to be more engaged around privacy as a whole, you're going to have a tough time eking out some privacy protection in one corner or another. Switching gears briefly before we go to the next question, privacy laws are the reason why gamification is slower to be adopted in Europe today. That's actually the main reason why, by observation. It's certainly influencing and slowing down the adoption of gamification in the enterprise in Europe, both for good and bad, I think you might argue. And it's also affecting the consumer side of that as well, where many of the regulations really make it difficult for companies to use consumer and employee data in a way that isn't explicitly permission driven every single time or for every single use. And so that is slowing down gamification as the legal issues are being worked out, as they're wending through various parliaments and lawyers are looking at them and figuring out how to make things work. I think you can make an argument that that's good. You can make an argument that that's bad. Either way, I do know that privacy is certainly influential in the European discussion. And my read on it is privacy will not be a top issue in gamification in the North American context anytime soon, unless something starts happening to reverse the view, to reverse the way privacy is overall in North America. But thanks for that question, Neo. And thanks all of you. Once again, you're here on the Gamification Revolution with me, Gabe Zickerman. So excited to have you here. We're talking about all kinds of issues today on our special version of the Gamification Revolution webcast devoted to my new book, The Gamification Revolution, and G Summit, which you can find out more about at gsummit.com. So I'm going to bring Sean Johnson on to the program right now using Amazing Spreecast. Hi, Sean.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm great, and I'm really, really glad that you're not naked. Okay, and that's not, I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
I jumped on, I just was like, turn on the camera. And you never know what's going to happen when you just turn on someone's camera on the internet.
That's true.
So
that's
Sean,
the internet.
Or that's one of the good things about the internet. It depends on your view. Okay, so Sean, you are, I understand that you did something awesome on gamification.co and managed to make your way here. What can I help you with? How can I help you?
Well, thanks. I work with a startup company, and we're an advertising company. And one of the things that we're doing is we build brand ambassadors for companies. So one of the ways we're looking to engage consumers with brands is to use gamification in some of our processes. So right now, the challenge is to figure out how to go about that, basically from the ground up. So we've got several ideas in development now, and I have a few questions that I would like to address just to kind of give us some clarity of direction on where to proceed, and just some general things that we've been tossing back and forth.
Sure. So let me give you one quick pointer before we start, which is you want to take a look at Needle. And Needle's CEO is going to be one of the speakers at Gamification Summit in a week and a half. And they're going to talk about social selling, engagement and gamification in social selling, which is similar to, but not exactly the same as brand ambassadorship, but it's in the zone. And they're a pretty interesting case study on how that's done. But anyway, continue. What was your first question?
Definitely. Okay. Is that Needle spelled normally? I just want to be clear on. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the questions we have is right now we have a current loyalty program that's in place right now. It's based off just a singular point system, sort of like an XP. And one of our challenges is, do we go with a mix of the loyalty program and the point system that we were going to introduce, or is it better to just have one unified way of gaining points and rewards? So is it better to mix, or is it better just to scrap and start from new with one?
Well, so I don't know. So here's what I would tell you. I would tell you having multiple point systems that are not coherently tied together is not a good idea. That will very quickly become confusing. And even in situations, if you think about the dynamics of different point systems in most environments, whether that's in loyalty or gamified loyalty, typically you have at most 2, sometimes 3 point systems at work at a time. And often, the most common way to start is to have an XP point system. An XP stands for experience points. It measures the experience of your users over time. It's not a redeemable point system. I think you know this already. Actually, XP tracks the arc of performance of your users and what they're able to accomplish, what they're achieving. Then you may have a
Right.
redeemable point system whose purpose it is to track inflows and outflows. So reward, right, that somebody can earn and then redeem for stuff. The reason why I said
Right.
sometimes you have 3 point systems is because in some large economies, like in a Farmville, for example, you see there are two currencies, one XP and two currencies. Having multiple
Mhm.
XPs is basically not a good idea, number one. And having multiple currencies is an advanced concept that you only really want to introduce when and if your economy is really humongous. So when there's a lot of economy going on, and you want to be able to distinguish between people buying currency and people earning currency, because that's the distinction often in social games, that's when you might have 2 point systems. So that's when you might have one XP and 2 points. But I would highly suggest that at the very beginning you focus users on XP and maybe redeemable points if they're accretive to your business strategy. Right? So if they're
Okay.
part of, so you've got some kind of reward system, I guess, that you want to propagate. What are people
Uh,
earning and redeeming for?
well, right now that's kind of as it stands. That's wrapped up into the rewards program. So at a certain, or the loyalty program. So at a certain level, not only do you get perks and benefits of the website, but you're eligible for prizes and things like that. So
Okay.
where we want to move that from is you become bronze, silver, and gold based on the total amount, like the XP you were talking about, and then you earn these points through certain campaigns, and those points will become redeemable. But there was just some discussion within the team of whether or not it's confusing at the very beginning for our users to look at 2 points, or would it be best just to go with one that is essentially just a ranking system? So
So
you
it's,
pretty
I don't know if you have a lot of users today, but anytime you take something away from users, they're usually not very happy. So that's
yeah.
why, that's why we always recommend a very staged, agile approach to gamification rollout, which starts with a kind of core XP system and maybe some initial interactions that then layers on other things as you test them in a scalable way. Because if you start with something like rewards, which it sounds like you have rewards already, if you wanted to
Yeah.
back down off of rewards and replace them with just with like having some kind of like status oriented system that's intangible rewards only, you might run into some conflict. But assuming that you don't want to do that, you have to basically only have one system here. Separating the idea of loyalty and gamification in a context is not a good idea. There should only be the one system. So what I would say to you is, I don't know how many people you have existing, but I would take a
Mhm.
step back in what you have right now, think about what it is that you're trying to do, and see whether or not there's an easy way you can transition people to the one unified vision for what
Gotcha.
you're trying
Yeah,
to do.
that's sort of the challenge right now, because even though we do have a loyalty program in place, it's not very well adopted, and the knowledge from our users isn't really there. So I think we have the
Right.
flexibility to make those changes.
Fine. So listen, it's going to be painful, but my suggestion is first, figure out what it is that you want to do and what your design should have in it to be effective. Then tear
Okay.
that band-aid off, right? End the program. You're going to end what you're doing now
Yeah.
quickly, because the longer you leave it, the more people are accruing. This is the problem, right? The more people are accruing and the more
Mhm.
they're heading in the wrong direction to change them. So what you'll want to do is you want to figure out what you want to do, end the current thing, make sure that you give the current people something in the new program to facilitate a kind of transition, and move more towards something that's a little bit more agile. Set your expectations lower initially about what it is that you're trying to do. And
Mhm.
definitely 100%, I'd be focusing on the like 2 or 3 behaviors that you're trying to drive. Do you know what those are?
Mm.
The main behaviors you're trying to drive? Like
Um,
the top three?
it- the top three behaviors that we're trying to get is social activity. We're trying to increase that, whether that be sharing on Facebook, Twitter, or any other uh,
You mean on behalf of a
social.
brand?
I'm sorry.
On behalf of a brand.
Oh, on behalf of our brand, we're okay. So on behalf of our brand, we're wanting to increase our social presence. We are trying to, for them, increase brand awareness among their peers. And then on a virtual note, we're just trying to ensure that all of our users are learning and kind of talking to each other. So that's a big problem with us. Our user base doesn't talk to each other. So we
Okay,
want to
gotcha.
definitely.
So listen, before I have to let you go, Sean, this is my advice to you is pretty straightforward. You need to choose
Mhm.
3 or 4 things that you really want to focus on. The main things you need people to
Okay.
do. Be very clear about that. Design a system
Mhm.
focused on XP. I would focus on XP and I'd focus on non-tangible rewards and leveling and something that starts to look more like a reputation system because I think that's
Mhm.
actually closer to a little bit closer to what you're actually trying to do, judging by your product offering. So move a little bit closer to a reputation system, pull the rewards out unless they're driving behavior right now, terminate the current program, move people over to a new reputation oriented program, and layer and bring those rewards back in as you start getting traction on the right behavior. First, you need to see that you can
Gotcha.
drive some of the right behavior, and then you can introduce a rewards and loyalty loop for people that tied to the correct behavior offering. But that alone, in and of itself, isn't going to work unless you have the other pieces in place. All right.
All right. Thanks.
No, thank you,
Cool.
Sean. Keep us apprised of how things go. Um, and as always, I love giving people advice about stuff. It's like one of my favorite things to do, and I really appreciate Sean coming on and all of you who come on to the Gamification Revolution, ask your questions and share your ideas with us. And we try to have a great startup, come on here at least once a week so we can look at what it is that they're talking about and talk to them about it. So I wanted to lead out a couple of little tidbits for you all, since you're, our loyal viewers and listeners. If you're catching this podcast on iTunes, thank you so much for tuning in. I want to give you a couple of little insights into some stuff that's coming down the pipe that you might find interesting, and all kind of keyed off of the power and interest that's coming out of the gamification revolution, my new book. So one thing that's happening that probably most of you do not know is that next week I will be recording a new Google Talk, like the Google Tech Talk that many of you have seen from a couple of years ago. The new Google Talk that's going to be recorded at the beginning of next week, and it is going to be I no other way to describe this to you but explosive. I am going to take the gloves off next week on some stuff that has really been that really is getting under my skin. And I think you've heard a little bit of, a preview of that from me today. But more or less, I really believe that we are on, the cusp of a gamer generation driven significant change in society, in culture, in business. I don't think that it's necessarily all going to be positive, but I don't think that it's all necessarily going to be negative. And I want to talk about some of those findings and expose some of those ideas next week in my new Google Tech Talk, or it's actually at Google Talk. And that, I don't know when that will actually be live and in person, but of course, if you're watching or listening to me from the Googleplex, come see me next week in Mountain View. And if not, it'll be, made available to the public shortly. But, at the heart of all of this is my contention that this is a very significant change that we're on the cusp of. And some of these business leaders are sort of out in front of it. Some of these companies that have been adopting gamification actually, like, intuitively, they don't always know why, like at a top level strategy, why they're doing what they're doing, but they're doing it because they need to address this deficit in attention. They need to address this, this sort of crisis of engagement, and they're doing that with gamification because it's really super successful. The second thing that I want to share with you guys in advance is, as many of you know, I give these live workshops that include certification, and I've been giving them all over the world, and they've been amazing. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do is teach. I really love doing it, and I love all the people who join me. And soon, very soon, you will be able to engage with me without having to actually be live in a class with me in real life. So I'm really looking forward to making that announcement and telling you more about what we have in store for gamification training and engagement over the next little while. And that announcement will be forthcoming at G Summit. But we have big plans that are going to change the way that we train. We get these 5,000 people, chief engagement officers, trained and employed in the United States and around the world. And in the meantime, I want to thank you all again for being with me here on the Gamification Revolution. I want to remind you that my new book, Gamification Revolution, is out. It looks at how businesses are using gamification as a strategy to beat their competition and increasingly to set themselves up for a world driven by gamers. You can go to gamrev.com, GAMREV.com, and buy the book or download the book right there. And you can use our new gamified social reading application called Read Social, which we built at Dopamine Labs to help engage people and share the best ideas from the book. And you'll unlock a whole bunch of bonus, exciting content if you participate in Read Social. And we've got Gamification Summit coming up in a couple of weeks. And I look forward to seeing you all there, either live or on video. In the meantime, everybody, thanks for joining me here on the Gamification Revolution. I'm Gabe Zickerman. You can follow me at @GZickerm on Twitter. And in the meantime, until we see you next week, keep having fun.